Right. So it's our great pleasure to welcome our speaker for today, Katarzyna Molek-Kozakowska. She's an associate professor of English at and head of the Department of English at the University of Opole in Poland. She's a discourse analyst who's worked published widely in discourse analysis on sustainability, but also on identity construction and storying AI. So she's always looking into the most recent events, but she's talking today to us about imagining sustainable futures, critical multimodal analysis of policy discourse, activist discourse, and science popularization. Welcome, Katarzyna, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And I understand I am also sharing this slide. That
I can see that.
Okay. Yes. Again, thank you so much. And yeah, it's a great pleasure to be contributing to this seminar on discourse and sustainability. Sadly, I do not have an ongoing study in progress or a large data set pertaining to some kind of environmental issue. I understand we have covered such things like flooding in Britain or Black Summer in Australia, and there's been fascinating research related to all different kinds of situations that instigated intense discursive encounters and a lot of coverage. I don't have that, but instead I'm looking at some incidents and policy developments related to environment and sustainability that somehow are reflected in public discourses more widely. And I'm particularly interested in the tensions that have accrued to the concept of sustainability over the years. Yes. So on the one hand, we talk about sustainability as something that is really important to embrace. And we have this like United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. But on the other hand, there is this research that shows that maybe sustainability is sometimes used as a greenwashing device for some kind of appeasement or for some kind of normalization of business as usual or this entrenchment of some economic interests. So this presentation is a kind of a step back, looking at my previous research related to sustainability and different types of discourses, and hopefully trying to map some correspondences, some similarities, maybe also look for new inspiration for new kind of interesting research questions that might arise. If I try to move on. Yeah, just a brief slide. This is my background. I identify as a critical discourse analyst in a more qualitative way. And a decade ago, I studied really intensely the popular journalistic and science popularization discourses, looking at how language resources and images are recruited to hype up the newsworthiness of certain types of coverage. And of course, when you study journalism, journals always cover something. Yes? So for politics, policy discourses are very high in journalism. So I looked at those two, specializing particularly in social actor and rhetorical analyses. Whereas political discourse has this strong rhetoric that like stares you in the face, policy discourses, for a change, are sometimes subdued in their rhetoric, and it's really challenging and interesting to study policy discourses rhetorically. But apart from those like mainstream discourses, public discourses, I have also had a look at different kinds of social movements and nonprofit organizations, environmental organizations, charity organizations, when I try to identify what strategies of mobilization and legitimization they might use. So this is like this presentation will draw on this on my diverse background and experiences to maybe also, I don't know, maybe also hear your understanding or your response to that, because that's like my positionality. yeah, there are two words in my title, like imagining and sustainability. So let me just very briefly say that I don't have a good definition of imaginaries. I just draw on the kind of popular understanding of imaginaries that is like quite popular across a variety of fields, from philosophy to media studies. When I talk about imaginaries, I look at this symbolic and value-laden dimension through which people imagine their collective living, not the material. Yeah. For me, imaginaries, to be imaginaries, something has to count, has to be relatively patterned, has to be relatively organized, and to some extent also dominant in terms of ways of imagining social realities or social orders. And there's also one more aspect of social imagining, and which is imaginaries, which is institutionalization of a certain vision of rational or desirable future, this future orientation. This is particularly characteristic of socio-technical studies, but it's important for sustainability too. So when I think about sustainability, I see that it can be discursively constructed in two ways. First of all, it could be this imagined end result in which we have situations, we have states that somehow balance the planetary resources and the human needs. But apart from this static construction, we might also have a more dynamic construction, like a pathway, sustainability as a pathway to that end. That's why we hear a lot of talk about sustainable development or green transition, something that is like more on the move. For me, sustainability and those imaginaries of sustainability are always like drawing from various discursive orders. They are co-produced as a kind of complex whole that draws on economics, politics, environmental discourses, and draws also largely from scientific discourses. And as a result, there are going to be tensions that stem from ideological incompatibilities between these orders of discourse or discursive constructions. I noticed that in policy discourse, these incompatibilities tend to be glossed over and somehow backgrounded. But in other studies, like in critical studies, they are going to be foregrounded, and for a good reason. As a linguist, I'm also interested very much in how all this is expressed, through what rhetoric or sentiment these representations of sustainability can be like foregrounded or made more salient for the public. And of course, there is a lot of research how this is often structured, from the alarmist to alarming or assuring. But in my research, I have used the construct of narrative, especially as this notion of meta-narrative or grand narrative in culture. So, for example, in cultures that espouse disaster narratives and have this understanding that the Earth, the planet, was in some kind of a paradise-like state, and then humans came and spoiled everything. They are going to read sustainability differently than in cultures in which, like in Western culture, when we have this progress narrative, where like the Earth was relatively, wild and uncivilized, and then humans came and started organizing it and using its resources and developing civilization and science and technology. And if they spoiled something like change the climate, perhaps there is also going to be some technology or science that fixes it. So this would be progress narrative, and it's really important, yes, to have a look how those circulating narratives, meta narratives, and also this collective imaginaries are shaped. Okay, this may ring a bell. Yes, these are some of the images that probably most of you have been exposed to, and they are also like contribute to our imaginaries. So some of them are sourced from science, from climate science, saying yes, we are increasing the temperatures, and this is going to happen. The glaciers and ice caps are melting, and there are going to be extreme weather events. Apparently, these images, they are sourced, of course, from science, and some of them are graphic or infographic, some of them photographic. But apparently, they don't have this documentary function anymore. Yes, they also became these like more more on a symbolic side. Yes, we don't read them, we don't read the numbers, we just read the trends. And critical multimodal discourse analysts have looked at different functions of imagery like this, saying that, okay, it's photogenia, it's style, it's salience that matters rather than the information and the content. And I think it's important for the way imaginaries are also reproduced in the largely visual culture that we have. To give you some more, yes, and on the other extreme, we have those aestheticized images, yes, of climate changed planet in which somehow, yes, the glaciers are melting, the ice cap is shrinking, yes. But these images apparently mythologize nature. And according to rhetoricians like Linda Walsh, they also demobilize people, because what can you possibly do, yes, while looking at this? Yes, what kind of they don't have this, they are not conducive to mobilization that much. Yes, this rhetoric is not necessarily used for activism, but it's still part of what we are looking at. Also, you were probably aware of those very striking images of like forest fires, like polar bears on ice, yes, and these alarmist images are not conducive to mobilization either, according to research. So anyways, this is just a backdrop against which we can talk about imaginaries as something that is always reproduced through different texts, through different images that circulate in the media, in the public sphere. I would like to start by with this case study of the European Green Deal, which is not visual, obviously, which is heavily political. And that was one of my studies, the initial studies, in which I looked at how sustainability, I thought I would be looking at how sustainability is represented. I was mistaken because the European Green Deal is like, I don't know if you're not from Europe, yes, maybe you might need to know that this is a collection of communication and strategies that are behind this very ambitious legislative package. Now we have like 70 pieces of legislation. It started in the first Ursula von der Leyen term, and that was a flagship program. It was supposed to encompass energy, industry, buildings, mobility, food, whatnot. Yes, there are many spanning all different sectors. The idea was to change, to transform, to modernize the European economy towards carbon neutrality, and the benchmark is to be neutral by 2050. And the European Commission itself, yes, appointed itself as the instigator and the monitor of these ambitious reforms. Policy analysts have been deliberating whether the European Green Deal is a paradigmatic change in environmental and sustainability policy making, or it's just a continuation of the same kind of capitalist discourse of growth, prosperity, and competitiveness with an element of just transition of climate justice. But it's just a work in progress because this hasn't been completed yet, and it's very hard to assess. Now the European Green Deal faces a lot of backlash from different places, from farmers, from certain European countries, of course, and maybe renegotiated. When I studied it back in 2019, 2020, I used the concept of interdiscursivity to map the crossovers between these economic and environmental orders of discourse. I used keyword analysis, concordance analysis, and selected categories from discourse historical approach, such as mitigation and intensification, to look for certain patterns. Yes, what is foregrounded, what is backgrounded. I also looked at how the European leadership, yes, is self-authorizing or self-legitimizing to lead those reforms, yes, and to champion this just transition according to European values. I'm not going to reproduce what I published about this in my paper. I just wanted to give you a taste of, for example, the word transition, which I initially thought is going to be somehow related to this green transition, this from dirty, heavy, kind of polluting industry to maybe something greener. But the collocations or the company that the word transition keeps in the European Green Deal is very much economically rooted. So we have investing, we have consuming, we have infrastructures, we have benefits, we have jobs, we have growth, we have industry, we have expansion, economic activity. So I was mistaken in assuming that when you have this word green or energy, like clean energy transition, you're going to have more like a environmental initiatives. They were all economic. When I checked the words that normally pertain to the semantic field of environmentalism. When studying that, I just emerged from studying environmental organizations. Yes. So when I looked up the keywords climate neutrality or something like this, I noted that they were used in like icing on a cake, yes, in this context irrelevant ways, because no mention of degrowth or reduction of consumption was ever mentioned. This language of management was very prominent, yes, with climate action, climate ambition, climate plan, climate challenge, climate certification. So these were these kind of semantic fields related to regulation, monitoring, yes, and they were also future oriented. If there were modifiers like environmentally friendly or toxic free, this was because they were aimed, or the initiatives were aimed to protect human health by limiting pollution. Yes, it was not like intrinsically worth to be friendly for the environment itself. Yes, it was environmentally friendly because, or on account of humans that can profit from. The same with the loss of biodiversity. Yes, it's bad because it is bad for the human-centered purposes of food production and social well-being. Yes, so the intrinsic value of the environment was not like part of this discourse. This is what Stiebe calls environmental traces, yes, these kind of proxy elements, yes, but not the discourse itself. Yes, the values of the environmental conservationist agenda were not that much visible, and the tensions between environment and economy were somehow ironed out. If you want to revisit that study, it's published in Critical Discourse Studies, and yeah, I'm happy to, engage with this study and see how the following initiatives in the European Green Deal were also studied by discourse analysts, because this is an ongoing thing, yeah, especially now that it's going to be scaled back or maybe renegotiated. So maybe moving on, so this study has never been published, so maybe I spend a little bit more time discussing it. Now we are moving from Europe to America, from policy discourses, this top-down kind of discourse, to more like bottom-up activism discourse, and from official channels like websites, legislative and political speeches, to social media, to Instagram. So at some point, I think it was the summer of 2021, I looked up the website of the Sierra Club, which is the most established American environmental organization, and also at the Instagram of that organization, to see how they reported on this Biden administration policy initiative called Build Back Better Act. And I wanted to see how this mainstream environmental organization is using this as a pretext to maybe foreground its conservationist agenda. Well, the Sierra Club is very big in America, and it has a lot of supporters. It has not been ever tainted by this association of eco-terrorism. It had always this very strong conservationist agenda. Well, the origins of that are in Californian people lobbying Washington politicians to pass legislation that would give federal protection to some pieces of land that had some geological, landscape, or natural features, yes, that were worth preserving for the future generations of Americans. This is how the national parks and the reserves were established. Currently, the Sierra Club is also acknowledging the climate crisis and the environmental and social justice issues in America. The Build Back Better Act was introduced also as a flagship environmental or sustainability project by the Biden administration back in the summer 2021. It, for some reason, merged climate initiatives and social policy initiatives. So there were like several $1 trillion, like in different pockets for clean energy investment, for housing and home care, childcare, preschools, higher education, workforce, and different kinds of tax credits for families and for medical care. During that summer, it was going through the House, and of course there were Republicans were contesting it. It did pass, but the Senate scaled it back and renegotiated and tabled it. And it was then only incorporated in the Inflation Reduction Act of 2021. But at the time, it was always also kind of problematic because of the other issues that came to the fore. During the summer of 2021, the public opinion in America was divided regarding the Build Back Better Act because, the American conservative media gave it a lot of bad publicity or negative publicity. So in this context, yes, the environmental organizations, particularly the Sierra Club, jumped to the fore as campaigners for that act. So we looked at the Instagram of that organization across August and September 2021, trying to download or trying to archive all the popular posts, like the ones that garnered more than 300 likes, not just a random post that weren't really noticed. We ended up with 112 ensembles, usually single image posts, some of them multiple images. There weren't very many videos or reels or whatever, yes, so we did not look at that. The coding was a nightmare. So if you have quite layered and complex ensembles, yes, you just code for a lot of categories, and then it's really hard sometimes to make order or some kind of organize that into a coherent whole. So for example, look at this image. Yes, you see a drawing of a billboard that purportedly like stylized it itself as if it was like a movie promotion billboard with climate change presenting extreme weather now available everywhere, and get used to it. Yes, with this layers of ironic meaning over different conventions like drawing and advertising discourse. So by coding the material, the idea was to capture the most characteristic representational strategies, interactional strategies, and compositional strategies, which proved very, very challenging in the end. But anyways, it is possible that for us to just capture what we could capture, like in terms of frequency of certain images, the image macros for campaigning posters and invitations and calls and announcements were absolutely the biggest group of the posts. Yes, and you have a taste here with different series of announcements. Yes, making people aware that there is this legislation that is being passed through Congress and urging them maybe to, discuss it or maybe call the congressperson, yes, and show your support and show up to some kind of rally, yes, or to a meeting. Some of this is stylized in more like soothing way, yes, with green colors and kind of, but still kind of urgent, yes, this is what we need. You need to get engaged, be part of this initiative. Some of this on the other side of the slide, you see more kind of representative of social movement, more aggressive maybe in the imagery and color coding, but still showing that the organization like the Sierra Club is actually impressing on the citizens that they have to take it up. Yes, that environmental organizations are not going to take over this responsibility, that this is for the citizens also to be part of the initiative. The second biggest group of images of posts were the photos of activists. Activists, people who are part of the Sierra group or affiliated or supporters, and maybe some celebrities too. They were explaining some kind of community problem and showing, yes, that showing their support for some kind of action. So the images with people in them are very, very common on Instagram, and I think it goes like it aligns itself with the very like aesthetics of Instagram, yes, when there's a lot of people showing their faces. But here the people are like just every like every person, like could be you, could be your neighbor, could be whoever in the community. Again, to show that it's something that politicians and organizations will not solve. If you want public transport, if you want more filters on the chimneys, or if you don't want this kind of, I don't know, mining license given to a company near you, or if you want more greenery around, you should just say it. It's a little bit transgressive, as you can see. This was mid-COVID, and like showing up in large groups and demonstrating was an act of courage too, yes, because you risk your health when being part of this initiative. But it seems like this human cause, human appeal was very prominent. And thirdly, there are photos of videos with no people in them, just either wildlife, yes, in its pristine state. This is what we could lose if we don't act now. I don't even go into detail what it means to have images of animals staring you in the eye, yes. Like anthropomorphizing like wolves or bears or whatever. So on the one hand, these images of this is what we conserve, this is what we want to keep, and on the other hand, also images, photos, very realistic of how this nature can be spoiled by different installation like fracking or chimneys, or kind of can be easily spoiled or polluted, yes, and end up in a very, very dangerous place where we have like this smog that kills people. So this, contrast between beauty of nature and ugliness of, urban life was kind of a rhetorical trick that we also spotted in that data set. The language of the posts was quite alarming to represent the gravity of the situation. Climate is changing, pollution is increasing, we have to act. The instructions were simple and direct. It was pointed out whom to call, who is the main decider, and who should be like lobbied, yes, for the change. There were concrete examples of actions, as you could see. The language was appealing with this broad repertoire of analogies, oppositions, yes, beauty versus ugliness, yes, pristine versus spoiled. And apart from the negativity that goes with these environmental campaigning, there was also highlights, yes, like this is what we have achieved, this can be successful, yes, this American can-doism was kind of characteristic of Instagram posts. And I think it's important to mention, yes, that like unlike in the European Green Deal, when the policy is like imposed from above by European bodies, yes, and citizens then rebel, yes, we have another like phase of sustainability, the one that is in the hands of citizens, yes, and if they get together, if they really like do the work, yes, and lobby whom they are supposed to be lobbying, they can actually stop the deterioration, the pollution, and maybe protect the at least the community or the neighborhood. Of course, it's a dangerous illusion, yes, that citizens can do it without legislation going from Washington, but still, this is the characteristic version of imaginaries of sustainability that environmental organizations are championing to legitimize their causes and also to mobilize supporters. Okay, maybe, well, very briefly, like 5 minutes to cap up with this case study that is very recent. This is about AI and sustainability. This is done on the corpus of science popularization texts that I'm doing with my doctoral student, Robert Radzi, who might even be in the room here. So science popularization is like New Scientist, some Scientific American, or all kinds of magazines and websites in which usually commercial organizations are selling science as entertainment. So with the advent of AI, like ChatGPT, like a lot of coverage was devoted to AI revolutionary potential, with some implications that these new technologies may now be, very green. I mean, the processes can be optimized, transport can be reduced, waste can be limited, sustainability can be enabled. So the implication being somehow that digital transformation can lead to this green transition. So another phase of sustainability is this: the technology will enable, the world or the society to be more sustainable. But this is something that was not very often reported, but there is this enormous environmental cost of developing and using AI technologies. We can only speculate because we don't have regulations that would require big tech to actually reveal what is the carbon footprint and what is the actual energy cost of developing those technologies. We have those for cars and washing machines and other appliances. Yes, we know the energy class and fuel consumption, but we don't know that for AI providers. But those who study it say that there is a lot of energy that is needed to power all those data centers, a lot of energy and water to cool them down. And if that energy comes from fossil fuels, of course, there's going to be emissions, yes. The International Energy Agency says it may be like 1% of carbon footprint and 1.5% of energy resources that are now used up by AI technologies, which that doesn't even include cryptocurrency and Internet of Things. When you think of AI, yes, probably this is not what comes to your mind. Yes, these acres, open acres of data centers. Yes, these big warehouses when those GPU units, yes, that constantly, process information are stored and they have to be cooled down. And of course, yeah, this takes energy. Yeah, so this is not the part of like mainstream science popularization. So the question we asked ourselves is there this deliberate backgrounding or displacement or agenda cutting of environmental issues? Because if AI risks are discussed, these are usually economic disruption, job market disruption, maybe data issues, maybe racial bias if the models are badly calibrated, but environmental issues are not perhaps that common. And yeah, we looked up how many of the articles over the last couple of years with AI in the title also mentioned climate or energy, and not many, like 5.2% of articles in our corpus had that kind of correlation. And if you looked at images, yeah, you see some of that. It's just a taste of imagery that may accompany some of those articles from New Scientist or Nature Briefing or Scientific American. Yes, they're very clean, very minimalistic, and implying that these are clean technologies, and they are maybe like saving the planet in the long run. And also there are the science popularizers or commercial science outlets, science journalism tries to show AI also as potentially helping us in climate adaptation. So even if the imagery is more disturbing, yes, more realistic, yes, the implication is, okay, we now have this AI algorithms that we can use to maybe monitor the plastics in the sea, or maybe air pollution, or maybe simulate weather conditions better so that we avoid, the potential like destruction from hurricanes or whatever, other floods or extreme weather incidents that we have. But this is kind of misleading, yes, because the actual contribution of AI to these very phenomena is much bigger than the profit from using them to like somehow mitigate the implications. Anyways, maybe I should wrap up by just recapping, yes, that these imaginaries of sustainability are very specific to very specific orders of discourse. Yes, of course, they are drawn and often interdiscursively by combining different elements of journalism with science, or activism with I don't know, some kind of other discourses, strategically drawing on scientific facts to foreground certain ideologies, to cater to the needs of particular stakeholders, to reproduce certain imaginaries and social values. So, I mean, this seminar has been transparent about it, that sustainability is a floating signifier, yes, and it's getting fixed for a particular context, for a particular communicative situation, yes, but probably in our heads, in our minds, we don't have the same images when we talk about sustainability any longer. With regard to the European Green Deal, this policy discourse champions this techno-capitalist transformation towards carbon neutrality, where environmental sustainability should not stand in the way of economic development. Yes, so it's just something to overcome. Yes, something that we have to consider. Yes, but economy and making it better and maybe more just is a priority here. And the European leaders are assuring that they know how to do it. In environmental discourses, this conservationist agenda may be more prominent. Even some of these environmental organizations may explicitly mention degrowth, yeah, and show the contrast between nature's interests and human interests, yes, but also as a rhetorical device to maybe get more people on board, to mobilize more supporters, get more donations. Sometimes these the notion of sustainability may become instrumentalized or politicized when there is this like Build Back Better Act going on, or another initiative. Of course, it's not to criticize those organizations, but we have to acknowledge that environmental organization, like any non-governmental organization, any charity organization, they are like part of the capitalist system, which causes disadvantage, exploitation, in justice, yes, and these organizations come in to rectify them, which is a kind of status quo that we have to acknowledge. When it comes to popular journalism, science popularization, as you could see, the progress narrative is very prominent. Yes, so sustainability as something that is enabled by new technologies, new discoveries, new solutions, yes, for climate mitigation and green growth and further digital transformation with AI, hopefully. Yeah, I guess that's it that I have prepared for today. I'm not sure if I managed to squeeze that into the allotted time. I have mentioned some names. There's also my research, and I thank you for your attention.